Okay, so we are going to start the Brain Initiative session. In this session, we are covering the G20 Brain Initiative and initiative from Malaysia, Israel, from Africa, and also from China. So I would like to ask from our colleague to actually stick with a 10-minute time schedule. So with that, I start the G20 Brain Initiative that we discussed a little bit earlier in my opening remark. It's basically focusing on the same vision of SBMT, which is building worldwide collaborative network bridging the disciplines of science, technology, medicine, art, and healthcare policy. So, and basically bringing different disciplines of nanotechnology and device imaging together. So we published this paper in Neurological Disorder Journal with Dr. Sidhu, focusing on the cost of neurological disorders in the US, which is over $400 billion, and the cost of the healthcare for about 5.5 for AD patients in the US. It's over about 200 billion now, and in 10 years, about $1 trillion. So the annual cost of brain disorder in Europe is estimated about $800 billion, and the mental disorders account for about 193 billion. And these costs are just staggering and going up. So because of these increasing costs, we actually started a brain initiative, G20 Brain Initiative in Australia with Dr. Sidhu in 2014. And we held the second brain initiative meeting in Turkey with Dr. Tarhan and his group. Basically, we focus our effort on building global consortium for brain mapping and therapeutics in that meeting, and addressing the rising cost of neurological disorders through global harmonization of related policies, standardization of data, and we try to come together and better plan for neuroeconomical assessment of the future impact of disease and diagnosis and prevention. And we also talk in the Turkey, we talk about facilitating translation of technologies across disciplines of science in order to rapidly identify and introduce new generation of therapeutic, including stem cell, nanotechnology, and artificial intelligence, and IT and devices. And we are right now working with our Australian, Canadian, and Turkish colleagues, and Chinese colleague, which is going to host our 2016 G20 Brain Initiative, to basically unify this approach and unify global regulations and guidelines on clinical trials, kind of joint IRB approach for international collaborations, and basically joint funding approach. So they can put some funding on their side, we can match some funding on our side. So that is something that we're working on. So with that, I think it would be nice to run this video link that I have for Dr. Christy Duncan, or can you run that, or? So while you're running that, I'll finish with the rest of the talk, maybe. So this was a message from the Minister of Science of Canada that she's encouraging collaboration across disciplines. So Kirsty Duncan sits on our board of directors, and she was elected to the Minister of Science of Canada. And she has a short video that, if you can run that, would be great. Okay, so forget about it. Let me just give me, let me just go back here. Okay, so the G20 Brain Initiative, as I mentioned, we're going to focus on the consortium. We're going to focus on global harmonization of policies and standardization, integration of nanotechnology device, and also basically focus on commercialization of neurotechnologies and global partnership. So we have also held our 11th annual conference in Australia, followed by the first Brain Initiative, G20 Brain Initiative event in Australia, and the second one in Turkey. And basically, we have now established World Brain Mapping Foundation in Australia, and as you can see, the picture on the right shows the Sydney Research Park, and thanks to Dr. Sidhu's effort, we have started to have an office there and plan to basically have an office in different kind of research park worldwide and bring the groups together. So hopefully with Dr. Kuma, we can extend this in China, and with Dr. Salahuddin and with Dr. Nevzat Terhan, we'll do the same in Turkey. And we also gave a talk on the left side of the picture. You can see a delegation gave a talk to the joint session of Senate and Parliament of Australia last October. So I basically touched base on some of the technologies that we use to be more effective and precise in terms of drug delivery and in my talk before. So just wanted to conclude here that we are expanding our global alliance for nanobioelectronics through this G20 Brain Initiative, and this proposal will shape the global translational neuroscience policies and engage institutions, universities, industry leaders, and nonprofit groups that could basically focus on disease prevention, diagnosis, and treatment through advancing translational neuroscience, clinical neuroscience. So the third G20 Brain Initiative Summit will be in Hangzhou in China, and Dr. Kuma will elaborate on that further. Thank you very much.
My slides. Hi, morning. This is QY Ma. I'm actually from China. I'm actually giving a talk. Thank you for inviting me. This is my first time on the SBMT conference. That I'm so glad that I'll be involved in this Brain Initiative effort. Okay, next one. Button. Just move. Okay. Okay. I'm going to talk three things basically outlined here. The first thing, of course, China is the largest country, but we do face a challenge in the healthcare industrial reform, you per se, but the Chinese government more recently are aware that healthcare issues, so there's consequent policy, as we heard from the U.S. Congressperson before, they're forming a so-called healthcare reform program, which probably set a foundation for us to think about with National Brain Initiative. So, everybody talk about China today, about economy and number two, blah, blah, blah. But we have a big problem in terms of aging population. So just by year 2014, already reached about over 200 million people, about 15.5% with people age over 60. Prediction is by 2025, we'll reach to about 300 million, and then by 2030, we'll reach over the population of the United States. So that's the big challenge. With so many old people, what are we going to do about it? However, on the other side of the token, that we see China is still a developing country. If we're talking about GDP per capita, it's still low. Of course, it's improving. So then if you look at healthcare spending, unfortunately, it's very low in terms of percentage of GDP. It's about 5.4%, even though it's already been doubled in the past 10 years. Then related to our meeting today, and the neurological disease disorder is the leading chronic disease in China, and governments also begin to aware. So here is showing the percentage of GDP spending on healthcare. We are well below a lot of other countries compared with United States, Eastern Europe, and Western Europe, and Brazil, and other countries. But the funny thing is, if you look at this chart, China life expenditure is still high in a range of 75 age. If we go to a major city like Beijing, Shanghai, it's over 82. Now, why is that? I just mentioned that the spending is low, and healthcare is still facing aging challenge, whereas life. I will contribute two things. Number one is nowadays there's a joke that you couldn't get a sleep while living in this downtown city in Beijing, Shanghai, because all the old lady is dancing at 11 o'clock to do exercise. That's true if you think about it. Why Beijing, Shanghai life is longer than any other place. That's number one. Number two is Chinese medicine, as you all know. It's more related to care. So how we can spend less money to make our live longer? Well, that's the issue. However, it doesn't mean we don't have a disease issue or disorder mentally. If you look at it, China has the largest, it's also the fast growing number of patients in particularly AD, Alzheimer's disease in the world. So 4% of population over age 65 having AD, so which means 6 million people. And then the incidence rate for AD is about 5% continuously, and getting worse when the age going above 65. Now here shows the real issue, okay? There's a big gap in terms of diagnosis and treatment of diseases, mental disorder, particularly AD, between urban and rural or countryside area. So this diagnosis shows, if you look at the age group of 80s, and the red and the blue square relate to, sorry, I have to talk about it a little bit in the Chinese character. The discrepancy between the red solid with the dark red is about 2 times. So those are reflecting women in the countryside. And if you look at the blue, there's the solid blue and the circle blue, also 2 times. In other words, the city people AD rate is about half of the countryside. So the challenge is that we have 26 hospitals, which characterized as 3 levels. City level, about 2,000, and the county level, 7,000. The rest is town and village and community center level of 1,700 or something. Unfortunately, the low level, which is class 1 level, which lack a medical diagnosis clinical service, but still cover 600 million people. So if we look at perspective, we have 2 China world. Where the rich place like Beijing, Shanghai, the housing prices are already reached Manhattan. Okay, everybody drinks coffee. But most other regions in the nation, half of the population still living in the countryside. That's the trouble part. Okay, so if you look at the rate of diagnosis and treatment for the Alzheimer's disease patient, it's only 20% today. Okay, and then the spending on treatment is only $1,200 US as compared with the huge number in the States and European. I'll give you an example showing here is a brain tumor, and the patient grew very fast, and this is the first time they've been diagnosed in the village type of clinical center with MRI after like a 60 years old lifetime. Unfortunately, it's too late. Okay, and a colleague in the UC San Diego always joke about it. We are no longer to see such a big tumor in our patient anymore because there's no early diagnosis. And then the second one is also related to the artery. We're showing here in dark. You can see they're very narrow. This again, the first patient is being first diagnosed, and the first time being advanced imaging technology to check that have this artery narrow, has been consequently treated and life saved. So the message is very clear: early diagnosis to everybody to save life. So the government is in action, and by year 2015, 100% of the population has insurance cover healthcare, although its per capita is very low. And then we have to develop a county community center, and also family doctor system to cover 80% population. In other words, to keep those guys go to this hospital, which is a local hospital, instead of going to the Beijing, Shanghai. You probably heard the news. There's a girl yelling at the Beijing hospital, said, I'm waiting for 3 days, couldn't get a registration ticket, because broker took it. So those got attention with the media, with society, with the leader, and the push for the reform, okay? If we're talking about basically by year 2030, we have to cover every county center with advanced medical diagnosis center with advanced service, okay? And then China just recently placed the healthcare as the key industry with about 14.4 annual growth target, which is of course much double than the GDP growth rate. Okay, and then just last year, this year, State Council for the first time issued the document, not the healthcare ministry, it's the State Council for the healthcare reform, for promoting this technology related to, for promoting the healthcare industry. The last one is the internet and mobile, which changed the world. With those innovations, we can link to everybody with service. So here we're showing that the mobile link, again, you can sort of, with the teleradiology network, you can put in a patient in a village and transfer the data to Beijing Hospital, even to UC San Diego, to Harvard, then we have teleradio diagnosed together. That's the first aspect. Second aspect is mobile link. Everybody in China has a mobile phone. Now we can transfer the message, particularly the aged patient could stay home and passing all the data to the healthcare provider. So those are the issues, and those are the technology change. Okay, last one, I'm running out of time. Well, unfortunately, up to today, there's so-called no national program yet for the brain initiative. And science, healthcare community wanted and needs to promote this initiative collaborative with the economic social impact, as we all know. And there's initiative in Beijing, Shanghai, and local. So we are forming a working group to work with Chinese Association of Science Technology, which is a very powerful organization. China Medical Association is under that association. So in my conclusion, basically, China is #1 in aging population, also #1 in diseases related to disorder and mentally. But China is catching up with healthcare reform and spending and place healthcare as a key industry. Brain initiative is on the way to form national program among the government agency, research institute, scientific organization, and industrial company. I think we aim to collaborate with international organizations like this one. We are hoping to host the SBMT 2018 in China. I have a few more words there. I already talked to the governor of the Zhejiang province, where the G20 or A20 will be located. We have a message to the Minister of Health, Minister of Science Technology, as well as Chairman of the China Science Association Technology. But waiting for the further discussion after this meeting to initiate that. Thank you very much.
Okay, with that, Dr. Salahuddin, you're next from G20 Brain Initiative Turkey.
Good morning, everybody. We will talk about the brain initiative in Turkey. Actually, this talk was supposed to be given by our rector, Professor Nevzat Tarhan. Unfortunately, he had an accident. He couldn't come, so he sent his greetings, his respects, his love to everybody. I am going to present this presentation for him. All right, let's see. Now, I would like to give a brief information about Üsküdar University, which is located in Istanbul, and this is the really pioneer in behavioral sciences. And this university has started brain initiative in Turkey. In a minute, I'm going to go a little bit in detail. This university is the only thematic university in behavioral sciences in Turkey at this particular moment. We are, just about to give graduates. As I told you, this is, specialized in behavioral sciences, and we are working in a highly multidisciplinary area. We have our research groups contains engineers, neurologists, psychologists, psychiatrists, biomedical engineers, every kind of engineers. And this is a very good cooperation. As a matter of fact, in session 31 and 32 on Monday, we will present some research, our findings in those two sessions. Those are solely, given to Üsküdar University. For Üsküdar University, I would like to give a little bit of information because then we are going to go to detail of the whole thing. But this is, we have a very comprehensive and updated hospital, we call it MP hospital. There is another hospital with large capacities being built. And also we have, as you can see on the slides, we have some polyclinics as well. We are not going to go detail of that one. And just have a brief idea about university. We have North Campus. This is the main campus that you could see at this particular moment. We have South Campus, and within the same area, in Üsküdar area. And then this is our, we called Çarşı Campus, if we could translate this one in English, Marketplace Campus. This is the hospital that I was talking about. This is with 50 bed at this particular moment. There is a big hospital is being, constructed, and will go to operation probably at the end of this academic year with a high capacity. Now, let's come to the point where, when we try to start brain initiative in Turkey, the first thing we try to establish a Society for Brain Mapping and Therapeutics of Turkey branch. This has been completed officially. We have already given the necessary paper to the governor of Istanbul, and it has been approved. We have established the board as well. In a minute, I'm going to show you that well. After establishment, this is a very important point for us to make well, I don't know whether you could see it. I can't see from here. This is the leather hat that we have presented. One more thing I would like to tell you about this one. Turkey, of course, being at the center of action at this particular moment, but we are still in a process. We are going to host this ECNS 13th annual conference. The data are being given over there. The further information regarding ECNS 2016 could be found in the linkage that I have given over there. This is a very prestigious conference, and the annual will be held in Istanbul in September, from September 7 to 11. For those who are interested, I would like to give this information to you. Now, in order to make sure that everybody understands this brain initiative in Turkey, we are going to have we are in a process of establishing a very extensive research project. We call that Brain Park. Will be in the Techno Park over there, which is a very good name, I believe, and that will, help us a lot for the dissemination of the brain initiative information to all over the country. After establishments, we are our rector, Professor Tarhan, had made some initiatives with the Parliament, Turkish Parliament. We are going to, make a Brain Initiative Day in the Parliament. For that, it might be very clear probably in a couple of days. And if that has been set up like our 20th of April we have with the United States Parliament, we would like to also invite, just as the first time I'm saying over here, we would like to invite Dr. Baba Khatib, as well as Dr. Harris, who has talked over here very nicely this morning. But we will work out on this whole project. And we had, as Dr. Babek has mentioned, the second G20 was held in Turkey. It was in Istanbul as well as in Antalya. I will just finish up my presentation with this, some pictures from those areas. As you can see over here, we have, with this one, we had a protocol signed up by Professor Tarhan is in the middle, as you can see over there. And the other people, probably over there, Dr. Sood, myself, and Khatib, as well as Mr. Karagöz over there. This is another picture from Antalya while we were working out on the detail of the protocol. And far away over there, I am the one presenting again something. And this is from Istanbul for G20. These are some of the fellows. I can see some of the people is in the audience at this particular moment. And this is the signing ceremony of G20 with, in Turkey. And this is on the left-hand side, you can see Dr. Babek. And this is the last picture I am going to show you. This has been, after our G20 meeting has been finished, we have given a reception in our hospital garden. The whole, we have a Turkish traditional music over there. And this picture has been taken as a memoir from there. With that one, I conclude my talk. I thank you very much for your attention.
The next talk is is Dr. Sidhu here or not? Dr. Sidhu from Australia. And then we will have Dr. Ben Arbicella from Africa, and then we're going to have Dr. Jaffrey from Malaysia, and then Dr. Slava from Israel. So I would like you to stay within 10 minutes because we are really short in time.
Thanks, Babak. I think I'm going to go three things in my talk. The first thing is I'm going to give you the genesis of SBMT G20 initiative. Number two, I'm going to talk about Australian perspective, and then I'll also answer some of the questions posed by Babak in his last email a couple of days ago. Now, what was the motivations to set up a SBMT G20 program? I think the major and critical issue is a disproportionate funding allocation in the major area of neuroscience, and that is the main motivations. As you know, 1/3 of the world populations are suffering with some sort of mental and psychiatric disorders, and all these accounts for 13% of the total disease burden, which is much more than posed by cancer and the cardiovasculars. But there is a disproportionate funding allocations. Most of the funding goes to cardiovasculars and cancer because of the imminent death, but the number of years lost in disability are not counted when we talk about the mental disorder cases. And that's where I think the issue is that we bring in focus the relevance of those disability years lost. And if you look into the statistics of the world, some of the developed countries, the number of, they call daily per 100,000 cases, much more in US, UK, Russia, and Australia. So this inequality of distribution of funding in neuroscience is creating a lot of imbalance. And the idea is to concentrate how we can bring in more funding in this particular area. But as you know that the funding, I mean, you heard about Honorable Andy in the morning, there is a fixed allocation of funding in a particular area or discipline. We cannot increase that. And we thought that G20 economic power in the world is the way to deal with and bring in some more money for research in this area, and hence this G20 initiative we launched in there. This is just a quick background slide just to give an example, taking dementia as a model. As you know that at the moment there are 46.7 million people suffering with dementia worldwide, and this number is going to be double and then triple in 2050. And most of these patients are dominating in a low and middle income distribution area in the world. At the moment, you also heard about from Andy that US is spending about $818 billion at the moment, which is going to go up to $1 trillion in 2018, going to be $2 trillion in 2030. So the question is, if dementia was a nation, it would be the 18th largest economy in the world with the budget combined with Apple and Google together. And then on the right side, you see that the geographical distribution of these patients worldwide, mostly dominated by low and middle income country in the world. Now, from Australian perspective, I think there are 3 million Australians who are suffering with the symptom mental disorders, and we spend about $6 billion annually to take care of those patients. And a couple of years ago, the federal government put in $200 million into what is called the BRAIN, not the BRAIN initiative, but towards dementia, and that's in the right direction. But the recent one, which has come through the federal government again, is the world first flagship of $20 billion. They call it the future medical funding. And that's where we are trying to engage with the government, how this money, we want to make a roadmap to find out how the money can be spent and diverted towards some of the neurological disorders. believe me or not, that when Obama launched an initiative, the BRAIN Initiative in April 2013, Australia soon put up together what is called a think tank in July 2013, so quickly. And this was initiated by Australian Academy of Sciences, where 60 bright young scientists, including neuroscientists, neuropsychologists, and neurosurgeons, came together to thrash the issue of what is this BRAIN Initiative and how Australia can participate with that. A number of those recommendations that came through, I think 4 of the critical areas, which I will not expand, but you can read through, the understanding of the higher cognitive functions and intelligence in terms of ultimately understanding the consciousness of a human brain, and then also need to develop a computerized software and hardware which is good enough to sort of model brain function, was the second most one. And the third, which is equally important, is to ensure that there is a seamless interface between the clinical provisions and the research investigations. In other words, a translational initiative, which is very important, that we translate what is happening in the lab to the clinic, and then strengthening our resources into ethical, public health, and health services, the research-oriented area within that. Those are the recommendations which came from this. And I'll give you a little bit of background where Australia stands in terms of brain sciences. The core body within Australia is called the UNS Brain Sciences, where I come from. And we have all the national institute dealing with the brain sciences going into the hub of UNSW Brain Sciences, like Melbourne Brain Science, Queensland Brain Institutes, number of foundations, Australian Brain Bank Networking, Brain and Mind Institutes, and then we have a Warney in Perth, mainly focused on a neurological disorder. I can classify some of those. It's hard to read, but all single area you can think of the neuroscience has been taken care of by all these institutions. And all the infrastructures and the informations coming from these institutions feed together in a brain sciences UNSW. And within our own university, the UNSW Brain Sciences interact with the Faculty of Science, Faculty of Medicine, Engineering, Garvin Institutes, Black Dog Institutes. Neuro is a new sort of a institute which has come out in a big way to address some of the critical issues of molecular neuroscience. Then we have a number of hospitals associated with the UNSW Brain Science, the Prince of Wales Hospital, Liverpool Hospital, St. George Hospital, Royal Women Hospital, Children's Cancer Hospital, and St. Vincent Hospital. They all come together where we can sort of work together to translate what is happening in the laboratory to the clinic. With this kind of background we thought that we should bring the 11th Annual World Conference of SBMT, and that's how we hosted the first in Australia, the 11th Annual Conference, which was inaugurated by the Health Minister, Gillian Skinner, from state government at that time. Now, then we have, you have seen this slide before. We had the first annual G20 World Brain Mapping Therapeutic Summit in Australia. Babak alluded to that. And we had actually a pre-G20 summit as well, where we involve all the neuroscientists within Australia to talk about that, where we should lead in terms of the critical areas and the priority areas to put together for G20 nations. I'll just quickly go through what came out of that G20 and the pre-G20 summit we have in Australia is the SBMT Fellowship. I wish I could expand on that one. I think that the great idea came through discussion with Babak that we should float a global fellowship. And primarily, I think it's based on Australia-US collaborations where we bring in a training program from neuroscientists, neurosurgeons in a critical area of new development in neuroscience, and then run this program through funding. And that's where we are working at the moment to how to find. And we brought out that white paper as Babak shown, and then we have the second G20 World Summit. Excellent meeting we have with Gelatin and other, you have seen some of those photos. And then second, I think these are some of the recommendations which came through second G20 summit we have in Turkey to build a solid working collaboration between different nations. build a strategic industry academic government alliance, and then facilitate a rapid integration, translation, and commercialization of innovations in these areas, launch complementary brain mapping initiative, which Gelatin has also mentioned that they have already launched that one, and to facilitate clinical trial and formulation of joint initiative review board task force across G20 nations. We had the first the brain mapping day at Australia soon after G20, the first G20, and we had some of the recommendations which came through, and that was there should be an entity in Australia to bring together the government, industry, and lead an association together. You'll be glad to know that, as Babik said, that we have legally now established the BRAIN initiative, which is called the World Brain Mapping Foundation in Australia. We are working with the government, and we are working very closely with the industry as well to set up a program where we can liaise better and translate what is required in this particular field, and also involving government agencies to bring in some focus in those areas. Now, coming back to my last slides, to answer some of your questions, Babik, you raise in terms of what we know about the epidemiological aspect of brain and psychological disorders in our country. I think we have an excellent epidemiological data, and that's where I think Australia spent a lot of money. Most of the money goes into it, and some of the data outlook I gave in my slides before. And then you asked, identify 3 key areas in forms of initiative. And I think this came out of that, the think tank we had, understanding the higher cognitive functions, and then talking about how we can lead towards the bionic brain by changing the algorithm and paradigm in computer sciences, and then seamless interface between clinical provisions and research intelligence are the other area where we should interact. Then in terms of, not the third point, the fourth point, identifying the areas of need for collaborations, I think Australia is very good in innovation. We are known in the world, not so much on R&D, but commercialization is a very weak aspect of it. And Australia is a very small country with the 6 to 7 top institutions within Australia, and we can easily interact together. And lastly, provide a sort of a suggestions how we can bring people together. We have set an example. We have established a World Foundation in Australia, and this networking through establishing those local chapter can bring in people together and focus on bringing in collaborative effort to solve some of the problem which cannot be solved otherwise. Thank you.
That was a fantastic talk. Thank you very much. The next speaker is from Africa, Dr. Arbisella. Again, if we could stay within 10 minutes because we're running late, so I appreciate that.
Okay, so I will be covering 4 areas in my talk. The next slide. Okay. So I will be giving us some information about neurological disorders in Nigeria, and then I will talk about some areas of focus, and then focus of SBMT and the way forward. But before I go to that, I just give us about maybe 2 minutes on telling us a little bit about Nigeria. Our population is close to 170 million now. The life expectancy is slightly increasing. If about in 2000, that was 48, but it's now at 52, which seems to conform with the global trend. The weather is fantastic every time. And then the economy is growing. We can say it's the fastest, arguably, fastest growing economy in the world. We are part of the oil producing nations. Now, about Nigeria again, we have over 250 languages, but the major are 3 of them, the Yoruba, Igbo, and the Hausa, but our major official language is English. We have about 104 universities. Some of them are private, whilst others are publicly owned. Okay, neuroscience in Nigeria. We're really struggling with a population of 170 million people, but less than 60 neurologists. So that's quite a tough one. Makes the job to be very difficult. Most of these neurologists are actually in the cities. Though about 70% of Nigerians are in the cities, but even with that, it's still a lot of job, you know, and many cases of neurology disorders goes undiagnosed at all. The imaging techniques that we have for ultrasound and CT, MR is very few hospitals have MR, but low field strength scanners. Neurological disorders in Africa, generally we know there is a global trend in terms of increase in neurological disorders. But in Africa, epilepsy and stroke have been identified as the most common. Every 6 Africans develop per minute stroke. And this contributes about 8.7% of the global burden of the disease. If you compare the dailies, metric with that of Nigeria with Australia. Australia 650, but Nigeria is definitely higher. So which means there is a bigger problem, in Africa and Nigeria. In Nigeria and Africa as a whole. These are there are a number of different kinds of neurological disorders in Nigeria. This is just a summary of some of them, epilepsy and stroke topping the list. And because of that, I will just give us some information about epilepsy and stroke in Nigeria. Stroke burden in Nigeria and across Africa is on the increase. That agrees with the global trend. And stroke burden is higher in Nigeria than any other African countries. Every minute, one Nigeria develops stroke, and it is known that it's unknown what causes the higher rate of stroke in Nigeria compared with other countries in Africa and the rest of the world. Though we know Nigeria is described as the giant of Africa in terms of population, but it seems as if being giant in population is equivalent to being giant in stroke as well. So there is a lot of work to do. Now, the major challenges are tripartite in nature. We have poor funding in terms of tackling neurological disorders. So no funding, no allocated funds for neurological disorders in the country. There is a lack of equipment and manpower. Imagine only 50 neurologists in a country with a population of 170 million. The focus of SBMT initiative in Nigeria, with the help from Dr. Babak, we have actually been working to get SBMT initiative started in Nigeria. So we started last year. We've had a couple of meetings, but we're still extending or building on that to make sure we can actually incorporate other African countries. But there is a local society for the National Neurological Society, so we've been working with them, and we are looking forward to increasing our collaborative efforts. Our focus, is to reduce stroke burden. Not only stroke, but given that stroke is the leader in the list of neurological disorders, so we are focusing on stroke. Okay, the way forward. So these are some of our plans to form a consortium. We've done that, the first and the second done. Consortium to be part of SBMT Global. And then this will give us opportunities to collaborate with world experts and to initiate projects that could be done, at a national level. And we believe that with the consortium, we will have a voice to be able to reach the government and in a way to influence the policy so that research funding could be allocated to neurological disorders. So focus of SBMT initiative in Nigeria. Oh, okay. So as we work together as the consortium, I'm working with the the global SBMT. We are making efforts to talk to the government, Nigerian government, to make funds available for research and to formulate policy that could promote or encourage medical research, improve equipment in the hospitals, and have programs that could create awareness about neurological disorders and that could actually make people to realize some of the risk factors that, as we know that smoking, for example, is a risk factor of stroke. So if people become aware of the damage that does for them or for their brain, then they could be careful. And we want to build we want to propose to the Nigerian government. So we're looking at the opportunity to put this through to the government so that the government could actually build a center dedicated for neurological disorders. We believe there are advantages that come with this. One of them is to have a dedicated facility that will help us to conduct research and also to plan activities related to neurological disorders. So acknowledgements, just a big thank you to all. These are just part of the consortium. We have maybe times 4 of these. And then to all the institutions we have worked. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arbaceli. The next speaker is from Malaysia Brain Initiative. Dr. Jeffrey Abdullah.
Good morning, everyone. This is the first slide shows a photo of Professor Babak Khatib, who signed on behalf of SBMT a memorandum of understanding with our University Science Malaysia 3 years ago. And the initiative is being headed by Professor Dr. Zamzuri Idris, who is not able to come today, but I'm coming in his place and presenting a bit on his behalf. So this is Zamzuri last year when he attended the LA meeting. So we are now very serious in trying to do more research in brain mapping, and because we have the gadgets, we have an MEG, we have a 3 Tesla MRI, we have 2 or 3 installations of ultra high field EEG. So, and we have quite a number of scientists interested in this field. So, the top 20 causes of death in my country is stroke, as you can see in this slide. So this is one reason why we are concentrating on stroke. And another thing, since SBMT got involved with USM, or we were working together, we have started doing research on traumatic brain injury. Because Malaysia has the highest crude accident rate in the world, because we have more numbers of cars in Malaysia than the whole Southeast Asian countries. So we're now doing research with Thailand, looking at the traumatic brain injury and recovery using fMRI, MEG, and EEG. So traumatic brain injury is very, very high. So we have lots of patients, and it's a big financial burden. And I think it is wise for us to look at the most common diseases. We have to do brain mapping to solve our own diseases. So the most common diseases is traumatic brain injury followed by stroke. So we hope that we are able to do this. And peculiarly in my country, TB brain is on the rise. And this is brain TB without pulmonary TB. We call it neurotropic tuberculosis. So we have started doing research in this and mapping the brain of the TB brain and working closely with Professor Pando from Mexico, who first described the neurotropic tuberculosis infestating the central nervous system. So we hope to be focusing on this. So TB is very high, and this is not the only problem in Malaysia, but also in Southeast Asia. So in the field of stroke, we have already started working with University of Lancaster and with United Kingdom grants to look at the prevalence and incidence of strokes, and also we will do more imaging and brain map patients with hemorrhagic strokes, because in Malaysia we have more hemorrhagic strokes than ischemic strokes because of hypertension, uncontrolled hypertension. Mental health problems is also very high in our country, and we anticipate that there will be more and more mental health problems because of the further industrialization of our country, and therefore stress, neurosis, and psychosis will be on the rise. So doing brain mapping of this type of patients will be also very beneficial for us to see how we can prevent this. So countries like Malaysia, if you look in this bubble taken from Imago Scopus, shows that our publications as a developing country is mainly on miscellaneous. You see the big bubble, purple bubble there, which is mainly on medical neuroscience. Our basic neuroscience is not very strong. So we hope with the help of SBMT and fellows from the engineering field, we will be able to improve our number of publications. And you can see, even though we are great in Southeast Asia, of course not as great as our counterparts in Singapore, we are doing well compared to the other ASEAN countries. ASEAN is 27 years old, and the ASEAN is invited to the G20. We are part of the G22, but we are not part of the G20 group. So at the moment we have started this grant, which is looking at traumatic brain injury of patients in the whole of Malaysia and looking at the recovering brain. And to conclude, we like to thank SBMT for opening our eyes. They were like, the SBMT is like the Romulans coming to Earth and introducing to us the importance of brain mapping. And because we have money to buy gadgets and we have the know-how to do research, so we are now going forward to do this, and I hope that we are able to bank large data. We have to now work with universities with terabytes of computer space so that we're able to save all this data from all the research that we have for the future of the Malaysian population. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me, and today I would like to present our new Israel Brain Mapping Initiative, and I would like to talk about, first of all, that we are part of the world and we have all the same problems with the brain disorders epidemiology, and actually the final, that the modern world is bad for your brain. But what can we contribute and what we can do to change it? First of all, technology. Israel is well known for the advanced technology, and we are lucky to have different technological advantages and advancement that could be part of what we can offer to the world. And for example, I would like to just figure out, just maybe point few of these major breakthroughs. like cytoskeleton, and about also advantages and advancement in the transcranial magnetic stimulation that developed in Israel, and MRI-guided focused ultrasound, artificial intelligence, and speech therapy, and of course, some ideas how to improve the stroke treatment by hyperbaric oxygenation induced late neuroplasticity. So all ideas that you heard today, that in Israel we have some solutions that we would be happy to be part, and we would be happy to collaborate with all other countries and all other institutions all around the world. Certainly, Brain Initiative in Israel it has also quite some story, initiated by the president or ex-president Peres. And actually, what we are talking today about the new initiatives of brain mapping initiatives, and we are creating our own direction to encourage collaboration all around the world. Certainly, I would like to just focus on few areas of collaboration where we can where we can get success, and of course, it's scientific research, education, healthcare, and of course, commercialization, because Israel is very good in the commercialization of the new technologies. Certainly, we can also focus on functional brain mapping, or what we're going to focus on the functional brain mapping, nanotechnology and brain research, translational research, and of course, therapeutics and drug discovery. In Israel, we have, actually, it's a very small country, and we have only 7 universities, and among them, only 5 is major universities. We have technological colleges, and what is good that in Israel we have a lot of startup companies, and Israel is ranked number 2 in the spending on R&D, and of course number 2 in the venture capital. So all together provides good opportunity that we can offer to other countries, especially countries around that our neighbors and all other countries. And I would like to be short, so I would like to thank you for listening, and I would like to encourage our collaboration. Thank you. Okay. Very short.
Thank you very much. We have few minutes for questions if you have. Dr. Barmel, do we have the microphone here somewhere?
Yes, I was just wondering, with this BRAIN initiative, is there a prototype or another initiative that has had success worldwide, a cancer initiative, HIV, that we, can see how that was done?
I think you have a great question, and the answer is the AIDS group. They did a fantastic job of kind of breaking boundaries and bringing pharmaceuticals, everybody together, 30 years after AIDS is no longer an issue. Or American Heart has done a good job to make heart priority and somewhat work with others and make this heart disease thing of a past. So these are the 2 groups that come to my mind, but if Dr. Situ could further elaborate.
Very, very relevant question. I just want to elaborate a little bit on that one. I think 2 global projects undertaken by humanity together internationally. Number 1 is the Human Genome Project. This was a consortium developed, and there was a lot of skepticism about Human Genome Project. And we put in $4 billion into it. Everybody was putting their hand up, what the hell, where we are going. But now, at the end of the 2 decades, we have a situation where it has revolutionized our diagnostic industry worldwide. So it's giving us $140, over $140 spent on this particular initiative. The second one is the space program. I think globally we came together to develop this space program, and that revolutionized the international communications and the business worldwide. So these are the global projects, and that's the aim, I think, of the BRAIN initiative. Unless we think that way, we won't be anywhere in terms of putting this BRAIN initiative globally. Thank you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Any other questions? Okay, great. So we're going to go to a short break, 10 minutes, and I appreciate if you could exit from the side door and meet with some of our exhibitors. Thank you.